Welcome to another episode of Blue is the New White. I am here today with a special guest, Mark Padgett. Mark and I have corresponded a little bit on LinkedIn, back and forth. I know he's a huge advocate for the skilled trades, just like I am. So I'm excited to get a chance to talk to him today. Mark, welcome to the show. And why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Tell everybody who you are.
Sure. Yeah, so as Josh said, my name is Mark Padgett. I grew up in a small town in Northeast Ohio called Cortland, Ohio. I am married to Heather. We've been married for almost 10 years. We have 3 little ones. William, my oldest boy, he's 5 years old. We have Vivian. She's going to be 3 here very soon. And Meredith is about 10 months old. I've been in the HVAC industry now for since I was 18, so 15 years, and I currently work as an account executive at XOi Technologies.
Very cool. 3 little ones, huh?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. House full.
They keep us busy. Yeah.
I bet they do. I got 2 little girls, and 4 years and little over a year. And I'll tell you, man, that house has never been louder.
Yeah. They're a lot of fun though, aren't they?
Oh, they're great. You know, I don't know how I would do with 3, right? You know, you only got 2 hands, you know, that third one is like that extra element that, you know, so I commend you on that, man. Nice job.
Thank you. Well, thank you. You got to play zone. You can't do one. Yeah. Man to man anymore. Zone defense.
Exactly. All right, cool. So you said you got into the trades basically right out of high school. You said 18 years old, it sounds like. Okay,
yeah.
Cool. So tell me a little bit about, you know, your high school experience with regard to the trades. Did you know about them? How did you learn about them? How'd you get into them?
Sure. Yeah, that's a good question. So, you know, I think my experience with the trades might be, you know, maybe not quite the norm. So I come from a long line of blue collar people. My family is made up of a lot of various, you know, people in various trades. You know, for example, my dad, he's retired now, but he was a firefighter. My mom is a nurse. She's very close to retirement. I've got aunts and uncles who are carpenters and electricians and steel mill workers. So growing up, my neighbor who we were really close to, he worked on the local road department as a heavy equipment operator. So, you know, the trades have been a part of my life from as far back as my memory can go. So I was exposed to the trades at a really young age, and always knew that they were an option, a viable option for, you know, for career choice.
Oh, very cool. So you knew throughout high school, coming from a line of blue collar workers, you knew the opportunities that existed, and you know, probably saw a lot of what could be accomplished in a blue collar field, blue collar work. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And you know, I had always looked at blue collar people as being intelligent. I always viewed blue collar jobs, trade-related jobs, as being good options, and I kind of always knew that latent potential that was there if you mastered your craft, if you worked hard, if you did well. But again, I don't think that experience is common for most people.
No, it's not, and we're going to get into that, and you know, how your experience kind of differs from, you know, the majority of the experiences out there with regard to perception of the trades. But did you, so if you got into the trades right out of high school, did you go to college or?
Yeah, that's another good question. So I eventually went to college. So yeah, right out of high school, I started working for a mechanical contracting company as a driver and shop worker, just sweeping floors, delivering equipment and things like that, hardware to job sites. And it's a really great experience for me. I knew pretty quickly that I had stumbled into something really great. I like to talk about the theater, right? The whole operation, the theater of it all really was, to me, I was really struck by it. And it's hard to articulate. It was something I more so felt and experienced. But I knew that that was an industry that I would fit in well in, that I could enjoy long term. So after a few months of doing that, I asked the CEO of the company about getting into an apprenticeship, and he was all for it. And I knew my options in the mechanical industry were sheet metal worker, pipe fitter, or service tech. And me and the CEO talked through things, and I decided to go the route of a service tech. It was a union shop, so I got into the union, started the apprenticeship program. Like I said, I was 18 when I started working there, and it took about 7 months to get in the apprenticeship. So by 19, I started the apprenticeship program, and it was a 5-year program. And early to mid 20s, I was a journeyman, and I was really enjoying that work. But what happened was I eventually started to think I wanted to make a career change. I was still enjoying the job, working as a service guy. I was a journeyman and was really enjoying a lot of things about the job. But I started to think that maybe I wanted to become a pastor. So I decided, hey, I've got no college. A college degree in this could be helpful, and started looking around at options. So yeah, in 2012, see, I was 26 at the time. I left that company. My wife and I moved to Chicago. I went to college there. I studied theology because I thought I wanted to be a pastor, and I finished in 2016. So I have a degree in theology from Moody Bible Institute in Chicago, and I learned a lot, and I don't regret that decision. I learned a lot over those 4 years. I learned a lot about who I am and what I want to do with my life. And it really helped to solidify my decision in terms of like my working career, that I wanted to be in the trades. I knew for sure that that's what I wanted to do. And again, so ultimately just decided that I didn't want to be a pastor. And I'm thankful for that opportunity. And, one thing that really helped too was, my family was growing while I was in college. So when Heather and I moved there, it was just her and I. About halfway through, we had William. And then right as I was graduating, we had Vivian. So I'm really thankful that I had that skill, that trade to fall back on, because I still had to work. I still had to support my family. And, I was able to work for the school doing in-house heating, air, refrigeration, plumbing, electrical, all that stuff because of my background. So it was really a great way to support, my family while I was a student. So yeah, to answer your question, I went, it's a little bit different, right? I think my story might be a little unique in that sense that I did the trade thing, thought I wanted to go to college, realized that I didn't want to do what my degree pertained to for a living, and got back into the trade as soon as I graduated. Or even continue to work, in the trade while I was a student. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I got to say, I love that because, I think, did you end up reading my book? Did you get a chance to read it? Okay. So that's one of the things that I talk about is, taking on a skilled trade right after high school, if that's the route you decide to go, or even if you don't know what route you want to go and you're looking for something to do in the meantime, that's one of the options that the skilled trades provides, right? You were able to make that conscious decision, years down the line that, hey, you know what, I want to try something else because this is something that I think that, I might have a passion for. But it's not like you were forced into that, route. And because, your life could have turned out a whole lot different had you, gone right into the college route right after high school, instead of the skilled trades. So you were able to kind of use that as bookends for something that you found value in. You said you learned a lot, and you learned a lot about yourself, and probably, I would imagine, learned a lot about what your true passions are and what makes you happy.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And related to that, and I'm glad you said that, because what comes to mind then is that there was a sense where when I was leaving that mechanical contracting company and loading up a U-Haul truck and moving to Chicago to try this out, there was a sense where I felt like I've got a skill that is in demand that I can always fall back on. So it really reduced for me the risk, right? At the time, the risk was not going to school, and then later in my life wondering what would have happened if I did. What would have happened if I went to school and became a pastor like I thought I wanted to do. So now, like I a plus to all this is that I don't have to live with I don't have to wonder if I'll ever regret trying that. So I got to have that experience. But I think the main point here for me is to say that, I had that skill to fall back on. It kind of reduced a lot of that risk or stressors that maybe if I didn't have that skill, I would have been thinking, if this doesn't work out, what do I do? Like I'm right back to square one. So.
Right. No, absolutely. So I think that's a great story, and that's a perfect example of one of the benefits that the trades provides. So the next question, as you know, on my list was about the perception of tradesmen before deciding to pursue the trade yourself. But I'm going to skip that one because coming from a line of blue collar workers, I can't imagine that you're going to say, well, I had the typical perception of the trades. So
Right.
we're going to go on to the next question, which is, what do you think others actually perceive, of tradespeople, and if that's a negative image, how can we change it?
Yes. All right. So in my experience, when people would ask me, so at 19, 20, 21, I was working my way through that apprenticeship. And then once I became a journeyman, you're in these social situations where people are like, what do you do? Right. In my experience, I got some, right. When I would tell people I'm actually, you're 19, are you in school? What are you studying? And I'm actually doing an apprenticeship. I want to become a service tech, HVAC service tech. So I would get those weird looks. I would get those kind of off-color comments, right? And then when I started to tell people, I'm applying for college, or I got into school, or I'm in college for this, a lot of times the reaction was more positive. Oh, that's great, wonderful. So it's kind of interesting to be on both sides of that and experience both sides of that. And I think that gets at your question about what is the perception I have experienced? Well, again, right? That kind of reaction to telling people I'm a service guy compared to telling people I'm in school, or I just got into a school, I'm in college, or I just graduated, or whatever that may be. So I think that highlights that. I think generally, right, exceptions are out there, of course, but as a rule, I think the perception of the trades is that tradespeople are unintelligent, that that's a career path for people who are unintelligent or are just going to spend their lives doing something. What's the word I'm looking for? Grunt work, right? I think the perception is that tradespeople do grunt work, right? Now, granted, folks in the trades work hard, right? But it's not by any means all grunt work. And tradespeople the reality is tradespeople are some of the most intelligent people I know. I think it takes one thing to know theory about something and quite another to be able to take that theory and apply it to fixing something, taking something apart. I remember as an apprentice, I would working with journeymen, and there are a few that come to mind. These guys that were just amazing at what they did. Could literally look at a complex boiler system, or a 50-ton train and telepack with crazy controls, or you name it, interior chiller. They could look at that system, look at it, figure out how to take something apart and put it back together, or open up a electrical section with thousands and thousands of wires everywhere and read a schematic like it's nothing, right? And know exactly where to put their meter. So to me, like, that takes a level of intelligence that really deserves to be viewed for what it is. I think tradespeople really deserve a much higher level of respect than they often do. So yeah.
Absolutely. I agree 100% with that. and it's easy, right? Because it's easy for people to have that perception, I think, because um, it's hard to understand, right? Because whenever we think about knowledge, whenever we think about just think of the word knowledge, learning, education. You think
Mhm.
books. I mean, at least I think books.
Mhm.
And that's kind of this image that we've all adopted is, you know, the only way to be intelligent is to be book smart. When in
Right.
reality, that's just so far from the truth.
Right.
But because people can't, a lot of people can't relate to it, I think that they just, they're left to assume. They rely on their
Right.
assumptions. I like to
Right.
throw people off the scent. You mentioned that people think a career in the trades means you're unintelligent. I like to say inintelligent, because then people look at
Mhm.
me even funnier, like, inintelligent. Like, yeah, that's right. No. um
Nice.
but it's true, and that is the perception that exists out there, and that's kind of the reason for all of this and the podcast, and
Mhm.
and for people like you,
Mhm.
speaking up about it and letting people know that, hey, there is more to the skilled
Yeah.
trades than grunt work, and
Yeah.
than swinging hammers and turning wrenches. I mean, it is. I've got guys that I know that can't sit down and read a book, but they can, like you said, read any wiring diagram that you put in front of them, you know.
Right.
And I mean, we're talking in seconds. They can say, oh no, this, your wires go here, 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 and here,
Yeah.
and it's just it's a practical application of a specific knowledge,
Right.
and it's a form of genius. It really is.
I agree. I agree.
So what
I
would
love
you
what you
go ahead, go ahead.
say. I love what you say in your book about judging a fish by its ability to, I think, was to climb a tree or
Yeah.
something like this.
Yeah.
And if you judge the fish on those terms, he's going to look like an idiot,
Yeah.
right? If you judge a fish based on his ability or its ability to swim, there's the genius, right? So I thought that was a really good way to put it.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
it's the easiest way to get people to understand, the difference between intelligence. So, yeah, absolutely. What do you think is the biggest thing that the trades have taught you?
Yeah. Um, so I think the biggest thing the trades have taught me is the value of grit. And the reason I say that is that my apprenticeship, those early years were so hard, right? I remember I was in the third year of my apprenticeship program, and my company started sending me out on calls by myself. And, they're like, hey, if you run into a problem, you can call this person, that person, that person, journeyman, they can help you. But anyways, that time was really hard. And there was a period where, I'm going through that learning curve. There was a period where it was really tough. And I was going on call after call after call, trying to figure things out on my own. And I remember even for a time, there was a period there where I considered quitting. And I'm glad I didn't, because, thankfully my colleagues were really patient. They were there to help me, and I stuck with it and eventually started to catch on. And when you catch on as a service guy or service gal and you're knocking out service calls, you go on site, you know exactly what you're doing, you know what you're looking for, you know how to fix the problem. That's a really good feeling. There's instant gratification there. So the lesson there is just grit, stick with it. And maybe if we were to take that principle bigger picture, it's really just that I think anything in life that is worth it, really, truly worth it, is going to be hard. It's going to be hard. But if you stick with it, oftentimes the outcome is worth that struggle.
Absolutely, 100%. I could not agree more with that statement. I say all the time, the only true failure is giving up.
Mm-hmm.
And if you stick something out, in my eyes and how I've always viewed it, is that failure doesn't exist. It's only learning experience after learning experience, as long as you
Right.
learn something from it. And
Great.
to your point, I think everybody in the trades has that time, or those days where they feel like they have to break through that brick wall, right? I've wanted to
Mhm.
quit so many times,
Mhm.
and I know so many people that are the same way, but the gratification that you get once you stick it out, and you know you can start going from job to job, solving these problems and seeing that
Mhm.
gratitude come over the faces of the customers. That's the
Mhm.
stuff that reminds us, right? As hard as anything might be and any job might be. And, uh, you know, I've had to go back several times when I was in the field on stupid things,
Yeah.
and I've learned on every single one of them. But at the end of the day, when you finally do it, when you stick it out, when you persevere, and you can wipe your hands clean and say, I accomplished this, and
Right.
physically, tangibly see it, I think it makes a
Right.
huge impact, not only on whoever it is that you're serving, but also
Mhm.
on yourself. It's like a point where you can feel yourself grow to the next level of a human being. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
It does. It does. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Very well put.
So tell me, what do you professionally, what do you love most about what you do now? Now, before you answer that
Mhm.
question,
Yeah.
I want to put into perspective kind of the timeline of your career, your journey through the trades. So you got
Sure.
out of high school, you went right into an apprenticeship, you were a service technician, right? You kind of did that through going to school, and then you got out of school and you went back into the trades. I was
Mhm.
looking at your LinkedIn profile, and I saw that you went from, I believe, a service technician to working for Lennox. Is that correct?
That's right. Yes.
And what were you doing at Lennox?
Sure. So at Linux, I was working in sales. And actually my role right before Linux, I was working for a heating and air conditioning company. And, my title was service tech, but it was a smaller shop. There were 4 service techs. I was one of 4, and they had 4 installers. So smaller operation. But at that company, I kind of had this dual role where I was a service guy, and that was my main job, but there was also an element of sales. So through that, I started to really get my feet wet on the sales side of the HVAC industry. So started to look. I really enjoyed sales, and I think what I liked about that was, um, you know, being an advisor to customers, helping them make good decisions, to solve their problems. So whereas as a service guy, I was solving the technical problems, the problems with equipment, and sales, I could solve some other problems related, right, to that stuff. But anyway, so I got that job at Linux. I was working as an inside sales rep, and was there for about a year in sales.
Okay, and then you went and joined the XOi team, which is
That's right.
pretty awesome. I love everybody over at XOi. So what made to that transition? Because this is a
Yeah.
unique situation, and I'm glad I'm getting the chance to talk to you, because you're a perfect example of the different opportunities that exist within the trades, from service technician to sales, and then to
Yeah.
ultimately a role that serves the trades.
Right. Right. Yeah. So, yeah, I made that jump for a few reasons. Number one, I'm deeply concerned about the skilled trades labor gap, and the reason XOI was started was to address that. So it was to join XOI was an opportunity for me to begin to work on helping to solve that problem, on a larger scale, right? Like having more time per week to solve that problem. It's really important to me in whatever I'm doing to feel like my work matters. And like just to have that thought that I have the opportunity with XOI to hopefully ultimately address the skilled trades labor gap and improve an industry that I love, and help and serve people in the industry that I care deeply about, was what drove me to XOI, and kind of started that process and looking into it and applying and all that.
That's awesome. I really like that, because it's it's a testament to those within the industry, right? As Aaron so eloquently puts, these people are the salt of the earth folks,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
it really is. I mean, to even have an opportunity to work with a company like that lets you kind of, what it sounds like is focus on a higher purpose,
Hmm.
is nothing short of amazing. I mean, that opportunity can't exist in every industry out there, and so again, I love this industry. I love the people in this industry, and this is a perfect example of what I talk about every day. So professionally, then, what do you love most about what you do?
Yeah. Yeah. Great question. So, and it's also related to my answer to this is related to your previous question about, why did I go from being a service guy to sales at Linux and then to where I am now at XOi, and what do I love most about what I do? And so it's all kind of related. So, you know, I would say it's also related to that decision when I thought I wanted to be a pastor. So what I love most about what I do is I get to serve, support, help people who have a particular need. And we do that at XOi by a number of means. I mentioned the kind of big picture. We're trying to solve the skilled trades labor gap, but what does that look like on a day-to-day basis? I get to have conversations with HVAC companies, mechanical, electrical, plumbing companies, about their business, their processes, and really get to know people and understand their particular pain points, and then help them to leverage our technology to solve those pain points. Maybe they have inefficiencies in terms of their operations, right? Maybe they're struggling with developing trust with their customers, so they need a higher level of transparency. Maybe overall their revenue's down and they're not hitting their growth targets. Well, I get to live in their world, learn to understand their problems, become a trusted advisor to them, serve, support, and help them to relieve those pain points. So it's this kind of idea, right? I kind of noticed this trend throughout my career, and whether it was as a tech or wanting to be a pastor or sales, or now at XOi in sales, it's, I want to help people, serve people, support people, relieve pain points and problems to ultimately make their life better. Does that answer the question?
It absolutely does. No, absolutely 100% does. And it's an answer that I hear just constantly, which is great. I love it. I mean, it's, it, it seems to be, I think, the most common reason why anybody is in a trade that's passionate about what they do, because I know there's some people out there, just like any industry, where, they may have been pushed into it by a family member or whatever the reason may be. But the majority of people that, how I like to say, came into the trades by accident, but stay on purpose, it's because they get the opportunity to help people. They get the opportunity to, help coworkers and apprentices learn and grow. They get the opportunity to solve problems on a daily basis for their customers. And I know for me, that look of satisfaction, that look of gratitude that comes over a customer's face when you do a good job,
Right.
and you help them out of a problem that they so clearly have. I mean, there's nothing better than that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's fantastic. And, so I think that's a great answer. And I can't hear that answer enough. I really can't. I think it's huge. And honestly, I think that more people than we know value that, especially in the coming generations. That's a big thing that I think that kids these days coming out of high school want out of a career, or just a general personal fulfillment, is to be able to help people. So, I'm trying to put that up on a pedestal, as far as what the trades can offer, because it's so evident to us because we're in it, right? But it's not evident to, the high school kids over here. They just
Right.
don't see the correlation.
Right.
But I think it's a great
Yeah.
answer.
Yeah. Thank you.
So if there was one thing that you could say to our listeners about choosing a career in the trades, what would that be?
Yeah. Yeah. It would be, I would want to say, if you're out there and you're considering a career in the trades, you've done your due diligence, right? You've looked into it a little bit. This isn't just I woke up today and had this thought and I'm all in. Do your due diligence. If you can, get in touch with someone in the trade that you're interested in. Here at the end of this podcast, I'll share some ways in which I can be contacted. I'm more than happy to, if someone's interested in HVAC service, service tech job, anything like that, I'm more than happy to talk to anyone. But anyways, try to find someone who's in that role, see if you can shadow them for a day or two. And ultimately, I would say, if what's holding you back is the current perception, the weird looks you might get from family and friends when you tell them you're thinking about this, I would say, with all due respect to those people, do it anyways. Try it. I don't think that if you've done your due diligence, you've looked into it a bit, I don't think you'll regret the decision. And I would say just do it.
Awesome. Yeah, not many people do regret the decision once they get into it and see what it's all about, and that's a very good point. I'm glad that you brought that up, because I think that that might be a pain point, if you will, for a lot of people, and it might be one of the reasons why they resist getting into the trades, because in this day and age, let's call it what it is. Let's be honest. People tend to care a lot about what other people think, other people's attention.
Yep.
You've got social media these days, and you hear all the time about likes, and how people kind of measure their own self-worth based on how many likes they have or how many followers they have. And I think it's I think that and not to bash social media, I think that a lot of it is very good, and it's awesome for providing transparency for exactly what we're talking about now, but I do think that we do also need to focus on making sure that people understand, for lack of a better term, just don't care what somebody else thinks. Stop caring what other people think. Do what makes you happy, and do what you need to do to find out what makes you happy. Right?
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, also not only doing what makes you happy, but a career in the trades could very well make someone very happy. But as we've talked about today, it's an avenue through which you'll have opportunities to meet some really great people, help people out, right? Whether it's, a restaurant, right? A restaurant who has a fryer that's down, or an office building that has a rooftop unit down, they have no cooling, whatever it is. Like, the trades offer that path to where you can literally give yourself to helping others. And that is such a rewarding thing. To me, that far surpasses a negative perception, right? That the trades often have. It's so rewarding. It offsets that negative perception. Although it does sting a little bit, right? When someone gives you that weird look or makes an off-color comment.
Right.
But generally, day to day, it's an incredibly rewarding career path.
Absolutely. The issue is we've got to get past the perception before we can realize that.
Agreed.
So that's awesome. So, in my book, I talk about how everybody defines success differently. And you need to pursue the type of success that how you define it. So I'm curious about you, Mark. How do you define success, and how have the trades helped you achieve it?
Sure. So that's such a good question, Josh. It's not one I thought a whole lot about before starting this conversation with you. I think it goes back to what I said a few minutes ago with spending my life working towards supporting, serving, and helping people, right? So I want to, in order to be successful, I need to be able to do those things, help, serve, support my family. So the trades have helped me to do that economically, and also, by providing a really good work-life balance. I'm able to be home with my wife and children in the evenings and on weekends. I'm able to go to soccer practice and even coach like my son's soccer team. So there's that aspect. And then also I'm able to, in order to be successful, I want to be doing those things with friends and neighbors and customers, helping them. So I would define success as having the time and opportunities to serve, support, and help other people and have a positive impact on their life, right? I would be thrilled if at the end of my time, people were to say, hey, what kind of person was Mark? What did he do? To be known as someone who was able and available to help would be ideal.
Awesome. So before we wrap it up here, why don't you go ahead and let people know where they can find you, and if there's anything you want to plug, feel free to do so.
Okay, thank you. So I can be reached by email at M as in Mark, and then my last name, Padgett, P as in Paul, A as in Adam, D as in David, G as in Greg, E as in Edward, and then 2 T's as in Tony, at XOi, it's the letter X, the letter O, and the letter I.io. Or on LinkedIn, you can just do a search for Mark Padgett, and you'll know you're looking at the right one if it says account executive at XOi Technologies. I can be reached on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/n/Mark A. Padgett.
Awesome. Mark, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it. And I really enjoyed talking with you about your journey through the trades. And,
Thank you, Josh.
I like I said, I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. I enjoyed it as well. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Mark.